So we'll go from the shallow lagoon to a tank that I don't think I've ever seen in a private hobbyist home.
And Jake, very much, I felt a camaraderie with his taste in coral. So these are Chicago's. And then above it, we've got a custom light fixture from Optics.
John, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for bringing us here to your reef. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
Unbelievable system here.
Yeah, glad to have you.
We'd love to have you take us through it. So can you just, let's start with the main display tank here.
Okay.
What are the specs on this thing?
Big. For me, it's the first big tank that I ever had. I'd had a 250 before that. This one is 6 feet from where I'm standing side to side, 10 feet left to right, and then 3 feet deep. It's got 2 twin sumps that are combined holding about 250 gallons. There's 6 Abyss closed loops on it, 2 Abyss 400s that run the 2 returns. And then there's another Abyss 200 that runs a heat pump for the whole tank. And then we've got a 5-foot-tall protein skimmer that's over there. That's a real workhorse, especially for how much I end up feeding the tank. It's very helpful tool.
Yeah.
And then above it, we've got a custom light fixture from Optics. And I've got a couple supplemental strip lights on there. These were made for me by Steve Tappert, who's down in Boulder. Great guy, good friend. I got to see his lights for the first time when I was at Reef Builders, the Reef Builder studio.
Yeah.
And Jake showed me those lights, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do I get them?
Yeah, they're over the peninsula still.
Yeah. They're set up on 2 rail systems here, and for me that's really helpful. I have MS, so I kind of want to make sure I measure out how much effort I'm putting in from day to day. So being able to get into the tank means that I got to move these big, heavy fixtures out of the way. So Steve designed a rail system for me, and each one of these lights, we can slide them the whole way down and turn them sideways, and I can get down into the tank and do whatever I need. In a big tank like this, these fish behave in a way that I've only ever seen in videos. And, you know, videos of fish in the wild, I see fish mating and showing mating behaviors and laying eggs and fighting turf wars but not getting stressed. Talking about lyre-tail Antheus. And I have a male that's in here who's very big, very beautiful, and a whole school of females. And at night, all the females will gather in one spot and swim in the same direction, and the male will come in and kind of flash down in front of them. And seeing it with this much space, it just looks very normal. It's very clear what they're doing. You know, there's that, and then there'll be times where you see a clown that fends off a nasotang that's this big, and it's not really a big deal. It's less of a constant swimming around attacking one another and more of a, hey, you know, this is my spot, just give me a second, and the fish just kind of moves on about his day.
Let's go through some of the corals that you like in here.
Absolutely.
There's already some players that, you know, we have at the Reef Builder studio. These are from Jake, and you've been growing them out here, right?
Yeah, there's a few. There's Jake's Manila Spy here, and then his Crystal Experiment Montipora, which you can find in several different tanks and places. It actually grows really well, and seemingly in every place that you put it, it grows in a unique way.
Yeah.
Then there's his Toxic Acropora Florida that I just think is a very, very bright and very interesting coral, and I like to put it right next to the green slimer just because they look very similar, but also very different.
Yeah, the growth structure's totally different.
And Jake, very much, I think I felt a camaraderie with his taste in coral, in that you would see really, truly unique things, unique representations of a species, you know, and it might be a subtle difference, or it could be, you know, very impressive and austere, but all of them seem to have something really cool and unique and special and vibrant. And no matter what the coral or the coloration, for me, if that coral is thriving, that is an exciting coral. That's something to really be excited about.
For sure, for sure.
I'm a big fan of brain corals, so, you know, and I'm using that term pretty loosely, but this Wilsoni over here is absolutely one of my favorites. It's big and it's fluffy, and at night when it opens up, it just turns into a completely different animal. I really have taken a liking to LPS. And you get a really, really happy LPS, and you can see it do some stuff that just doesn't look normal.
Yeah.
Joe the coral. So that blue acropora that's behind the scroll coral.
Yeah.
And it was at a local fish shop, and it was a smaller specimen, but it was totally brown. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's a really cool coralite structure. And he goes, yeah, you want it? It's just not growing for me. And I said, absolutely, yeah. And I put it in here, and in about 72 hours, it was just blue. And it kept getting more and more blue. I think this stag that's here, that's next to the orange passion, is a wild coral that I got a few months ago. And it's another blue coral that I really, really like. It's kind of an interesting coralite structure. There's some kind of cool greens to it, and later on in the day when some of the white is out of there, the greens almost appear yellow, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it's a really beautiful look.
You said you like to keep animals in specific conditions and environments with each other, biotopes, things like that. So let's go through a couple of these other tanks that you have.
Yeah, sure.
We could literally be with this big tank all day long.
Yeah.
and the amount of times that we're in Denver, we'll definitely come back and highlight some more on here. But let's go through some of these tanks over here. Tell us about this Christmas tree worm rock tank.
Well,
and clams.
Well, I'll just say I love clams. This tank originally was not set up to showcase clams so much. However, I kept always seeing Christmas tree worm rocks, and I was like, man, those look really cool. So I created this system to basically give what I would need to both filter and feed.
Yeah.
So I will put a lot of phytoplankton in there, maybe once a week. Other than that, they just get fed like the rest of my systems, and they've done really, really well.
What a lot of people don't realize when they first get into the hobby and they see these worm rocks show up at the LFS, you're also having to keep care of that coral that's encrusted on top. So make sure that you have a system ready for hard coral as well.
Oh yeah, and so this whole system is basically oriented around hard corals, but this is a catch-all system that I kind of use for intake. And so I have a large number of SPS coral that are over here, and so I can bring them in, and I'm very, very strict with how I handle a new coral. And when it goes into a larger system, or maybe my mangrove tank. And so in here, I've got, I don't know, maybe 25 now peppermint shrimp. There's pipefish. There's a 6-line wrasse that's in there. There's emerald crabs. There's all sorts of things that are going to naturally go after a lot of the pests that you'd normally find. So I'll do a pretty mild prophylactic dip of just potassium chloride and potassium sulfate mixture. And that does a really good job of kind of knocking anything that's on the coral off. And other than, say, maybe one species of coral, I've never had a bad experience using it. So I will use that dip, keeps the microbiome as much as possible intact, stick it in there, wait several months. If nothing happens, nothing changes, I'm not seeing any kind of die-off method of predation, that's apparent, then I'll start dipping it and get it ready to move it out. And so with that in mind, this system, I am certain, has got all sorts of weird stuff in it, and I see all sorts of weird stuff all the time.
Okay, so you've got your quarantine system over here, and then directly behind you, all I see is a gigas clam.
This tank actually has quite a few cool things that are going on with it. I really like this tank. So I kind of wanted to, and I guess we'll show the deep water portion of space off soon. But the idea was to come up when you're walking through here from one side to the other. And so you've got basically like the reef crest that's over here, and then you've got your lagoon system. And what I really wanted to show off here was kind of the growth that you could find in a lagoon and these kind of corollary systems between wave breaking and the corals that you would find in a lagoon seemingly right behind it. The flow varies throughout the day. Right now it's kind of just chill, but when there's 4 MP40s that are on the side, and they will create a downright wave.
That's
pulse.
cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun where you have this really high flow situation that drops off to nothing. And so I've got large LPS that are able to get along really well with one another, and a couple SPS that are hanging out in there. And in fact, there's an Acropora Tarakai that's on this side.
Oh, yeah.
Taraki. What's interesting about it is if you see the one that's on the other side, very dense radial corallite growth. This one, it's making little strands of spaghetti.
Very thin.
I think, last time I checked, it was like 52 par.
Okay.
At the absolute height of the day, and it's doing fine. It's been in there for over a year. And there's my Gygus, which is absolutely, I think, one of my favorite creatures that's in here. It's cool to see the way that these animals operate from day to day. You know, I see very different behaviors at night and versus the middle of the day. I'll see it with a large gaped opening, and you can, in the inhalant siphon, you can see all the gills. Yeah, and when you consider that given proper care and consistent care for a long enough time, that thing could be 4 feet long. It could be several hundred pounds. And yeah, I'll probably figure out a solution before then, but until then, it's just going to be my childish excitement at the idea of that someday happening.
I mean, it's not like you don't have a big enough tank over here to the left.
Yeah, you know,
you'd have to do some rearranging. I love the NEM that's literally getting beat upon all day up here, and it's choosing to be there. I think that, you know, a lot of times we think in the hobby that we need a gentle flow and they can't handle this, but that's what the ocean is like.
So I love that anemone. I got that in New York, and I had to buy a backpack that was waterproof and then get a couple gallons of water for that guy in the bag, and we stuck him in the bag, put him in there, and left the show and convinced TSA to let us through with it. And you know, it was great. I got it home, and it was in this tank while this tank behind you was still empty. And it is pressed up against the top of the water directly underneath a metal halide. And right below it, I think, is something that's really cool. So there's a green slimer that is looking like it's having a hard time. But if you look in the middle of it, there is a little lemon citron goby, which eats coral mucus and Acropora, and they will like mouth at it and get it to create that mucosal response, and then they'll eat that. I figured that if I put that slimer underneath a halide, it might grow fast enough that he could kind of get what he needed and the Acropora could still survive. And that appears to be the case.
Yeah.
But boy, the Acropora does not seem to be enjoying the journey.
Let's move on to the NEM cube here. What kind of NEMs are these?
So these are Chicago's, and I got, I think, 2 or 3, no, I got 3 of them. They were small and they were on a rock from Chris Cap. I just think they're really, really pretty. And so I got the 3 of them, and they were in like a little 35-gallon desktop all-in-one, and they seem to be doing really well with very, very little interaction. The only fish that you'll actually find in here is this
Cranky Maroon.
Cranky Maroon. She's wonderful. So I got her from a local shop. They couldn't put her in any systems because she would kill her co-stars. I found this little male that you can see maybe behind her. And so that male, I knew that she was going to try to kill pretty much everything, but that male appeared visibly to be almost the exact same colorations and markings as her. And so I basically got him a little cube, stuck him in there, a little acclimation cube, and fed him for a few weeks at the same time that I fed her. And then all of a sudden they were fine. And so they've been together ever since. This was actually something that I kind of cobbled together. And I put little corner reinforcement because I don't care how great the company is for me. Like when you get this tall, if it's rimless, it freaks me out.
Yeah.
And like I have no doubt that people can make a dependable tank that does that. It just helps me sleep better at night.
So easy, easy NEM cube. You got a lot of movement in there and beautiful colors. So we'll go from the shallow lagoon to a tank that I don't think I've ever seen in a private hobbyist home, a deep water tank. Let's go on over there. Now this one's gonna be a little hard to see because the lighting is actually...
Yeah, and that's not even...
not a whole lot of it, yeah.
That's what it's like normally,
So real quick, before we get into what's in here, can you show us the light, like what you're doing there?
Yeah, so...
It's not a typical reef light. There's nothing typical about this tank.
Yeah, so that is just like a $40 strip light that I got over at Home Depot. And I attached it to, I super glued it to a piece of plastic and then hung it with zip ties.
And that's the light for the tank.
I kept seeing these beautiful videos. I stumbled on the video that you guys highlighted out of, I think, Singapore. It's just shocking how beautiful those animals can really get.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at that for, a few years now, and I just thought maybe I could tie in two systems together. But the amount of nutrition that you have to provide to this tank in forms of like picoplankton and bacterioplankton and zooplankton and phytoplankton, all sorts of stuff like that, you really want to stick with live as much as possible just so you're not spoiling the water all the time. But it is an active process. I am in there every single day feeding 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Different types of feed. And I think one thing that's amazing about this tank is just seeing the difference between day and night. I mean, you can have a coral that all but looks dead, or on death's doorstep during the day, and it'll be, that big. And then later on at night, it just goes, just inflates, and you can watch it just catching particles out of the water. It's amazing. So it's 4 feet deep, and then it's 30 inches front to back pane, and then it's 5 feet left to right.
Don't even want to know what kind of tool you need to get to the bottom of that tank.
Big grabbers. I love my grabbers. Basically tried to make this look like a cross section of the bottom of what you would see in that reef. So I wanted to find all the stuff where the photosynthesis was kind of starting to die off, and you have a environment that looks pretty still and serene, but the amount of flow that is coming out of these 2 returns and these 2 gyres is incredible. Once you start putting the particulate food in there, it's just whipping around the tank, and it's really interesting to see some of these corals really do not respond well without large amounts of flow. And for a soft coral, I was pretty surprised to find that, but they respond very, very well.
So take us through the livestock in here. I see a lot of Chibastria, a lot of blue sponge in here.
So there's
Sclerionepthia.
Yeah, there's Sclerionepthia, Dendronepthia, all sorts of Tubastria. There's 1 small colony of 4 heads of dendros that are in there. There's Gorgonians, there's Euplexoria, which are sadly not open right now. I think that's been one of the biggest challenges, is during the day it's kind of hard to show in this tank because some of the corals will be open, as specifically the Sclerionepthia seem to really enjoy whenever there's food in the tank. It does not matter if it's daytime or nighttime. They were just happy to be a part of that. And then there's blue sponges that are all over the place that have kind of started growing, which is really, really cool. There's a spider sponge that's back here that I'm a big fan of.
Looks really good.
And then the black tubastria, which there's a black one that's back here, and all the polyps are really open on it right now. It's kind of fun to hide them in here because you really cannot see them. So I've got 2 Borbonius that are in there right now, and then there's going to be another 6 in about a week that will be in here.
Gosh, that's so cool.
It's really exciting.
This is the environment that they would thrive in the wild, right? You know, they're deep water fish.
I think I want the tank to be a little bit colder than, for the fish, I'd like the water temperature to be closer to maybe 72 degrees. When I go south of 75 to 74 degrees in here, a lot of the Nephthya don't seem to appreciate that. And so I've been keeping the tank somewhere between 75 and 76 degrees as much as I can. There's a large Abyss APU 400 that's under there. Have 2 return lines. One comes up here, one comes up on the other side, and then this return line branches out and feeds a turf scrubber, which has been really helpful and really effective for removing nitrates out of the water. It messes with the chemistry a little bit, but I can adjust for that. So I branched off of here and sent it upstairs, and there is a really awesome MRC skimmer that's up there that's running, and a degassing chamber after it. And I can, it's actually a dog food bin that I put, little bulkhead fittings on the side, and so the water runs in, degasses. If I need to put any kind of carbon or anything in there, I can do that.
This is such a unique system, and I can't wait to come back and check it out once it's
more than welcome.
Filled in and everything. John, I want to say thank you for having us over to your place.
Yeah.
Gosh, we could break down every single one of these tanks individually, but we gotta go about our lives, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.